meeting to order on January 11th at 6:32. First order on the agenda is the appointment of timekeeper, which was Kim. And Kim, as of right now, is not here. And there she is. We'll give her a minute. Hey, Kim.
Hello.
We're live, and we were just about to appoint the timekeeper, which we have as you.
Yes, I'm here.
Right on time. Are you willing to keep time?
Yeah.
Great. And Chad, I don't know if anyone, moving on to item 2, public appearances for non-agenda item. I don't know if anyone snuck in there at the last minute.
Nope, no one in the chambers.
Okay, item 2 crossed off the list. Moving on to item 3, approval of minutes. The most up-to-date minutes did not make it to the packet. Minutes that were there were the draft that were originally put out. And so, talking with Claudia and some other members before, I think we're going to have to postpone the approval of the minutes from November 9th meeting just because they didn't capture all the notes that were put in.
You need a motion, Nate, or?
You need a motion to not approve, or?
Well, I move to postpone until February 8th meeting.
All right.
I second it.
All right. First and seconded to move it to the next meeting. All in favor of moving it, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous to move them. And then I guess I don't know if we need to send them out again, or they'll just get,
I can send out after this meeting just to everyone the minutes that should have been included.
Okay. So Phil will send them out, and they will be presented in the next month's packet. All right, moving right along. I think this next one's going to be a good topic, so I'm glad we have a couple more minutes here to help out. Item 4A, Dane County Climate Action Plan. We have a presentation here and a couple guests here. Phil, I don't know if you want to do an introduction.
Sure, I can do a brief one. I think Kathy and Joe can probably speak a little bit better to their role in all of this, but Kathy Coons and Joe Parisi are both with us from the Dane County. Joe is the Dane County executive, and then Kathy is with us from the Office of Energy and Climate Change. So they both had a pretty significant role in the climate action plan that was released last year by the OECC, and I think that's probably enough of an intro for Kathy, you and Joe to take it over.
Okay, well, thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone, for giving us some time to come and chat with you tonight. We really appreciate it. Also with us off camera is one of my staff people, Scott Adrian, who's available to help us if anyone has questions or there's follow-up from the meeting. We'd be happy to follow up on anything that's needed. But I thought we'd start I wanted to give you a quick overview of the county's efforts leading up to where we're at and kind of the exciting path we've begun to embark on now. And Kathy will go into more detail about that. I also wanted to thank you for all the work you all are doing and really the great work Fitchburg has been doing in this area. Because that's really what it's going to take is for all of us doing our part, and we can make a lot of movement, especially what we've been dealing with the last 4 years, really at the local level is the only movement toward renewables, conservation, and dealing with climate change that's been happening. So, we've got some great momentum going here, and I think we're finally going to start getting some better support from the federal government. So, we're at this strange time in our nation's history where there's a lot of really challenging stuff going on, and there's also a lot of opportunity. So tonight we're going to focus on the positive. And so I'll go back a few years. So we've been in Dane County interested in evolving that interest and bringing form to our interest in addressing climate change and renewable energy over the past number of years. Over a half dozen years ago, we decided to do an intensive look at all of our county facilities to look at energy efficiency, availability to accept renewables, et cetera. And we started something a number of years ago that we refer to as the Smart Fund, where we put a couple of $1 million a year in bonding for energy efficiency upgrades to county facilities, existing facilities, and then if new facilities are being built, to make sure that we have the money to go up front and do energy efficiency, because as you know, dollar for dollar, it's the biggest bang for the buck as far as energy savings and as far as the dollars that we save for taxpayers. So, you know, over the years, we've invested millions upon millions of dollars in efficiency. And then once we did that, we went to the next level, which was to assess all of our county facilities for their ability to accept renewable and look for renewable opportunities. And at this point, we currently have about 17 county facilities that have solar panels on them now. We have, you may have seen in the news, we just went live with a 9 megawatt, 31,000 solar panel field out on some airport property at the Dane County Regional Airport. And that project alone is going to supply 40%, offset 40% of Dane County government's electricity use. And what we're finding is we're able to save our taxpayers a lot of dollars while cutting down on greenhouse gas emissions. You know, the MG&E project, for example, we worked with MG&E and we found land that was suitable to build this 9 megawatt solar field. And we said to them, if you build this, we promise we will purchase all the electricity from you. And they said they could do it. We were leasing them the land at market rate. They've put all the money in up front to build it, so there was no money out of our pocket. And in addition to that, the energy that we're purchasing from this project costs less than the fossil fuel generated electricity we were buying, and we're saving about $140,000 annually just on our electric bill, just from that one project. So this is an example of a win-win-win that's out there that saves taxpayer dollars, no money out of our pockets, and offsets greenhouse gas. So the exciting point we're at now is that we just purchased some more property out by our landfill off of 12 and 18, and we've entered into an agreement with Alliant Energy to build a solar field that's twice the size of the one we just built with MG&E. And once that is up and running, we will have offset 100% of the electricity generated by Dane County government operations. So, you know, we just want really project-based, said, let's do this, let's make a plan, and let's get to where we have to go. And it worked. And as you may know, we also have a number of other renewable projects that we have undertaken in the last few years. A few years ago, we decided to convert the methane gas extraction unit at our landfill from generating renewable electricity to further cleaning and compressing to sell as compressed natural gas for vehicle transportation fuel. And that reason was twofold. You know, we've had the good news that wind and solar has come down in cost over the years, so that it's, you know, very competitive. It's with fossil fuels now. It's cheaper than building a new coal plant. So what that has done, however, is when utilities are looking for renewables, it made the renewable electricity we were generating at the landfill through just burning that methane with generators, and the same thing that some of the farmers are doing at the manure digesters in the community, generating electricity with that. It made that cost prohibitive because it's so much cheaper now for solar and wind. So the utilities weren't interested in our power anymore at the rate we were getting at the landfill, and that wouldn't have, what they were willing to give us wouldn't have paid the bills. So we started looking for an alternative. And we came up with a plan that our staff brought to me and said, hey, if we invest began around 25 million, ultimately it was 28 million, upfront to build a plant at the landfill that will further clean and compress this gas. And if we sell it into the natural gas pipeline, not only will we generate a greater profit from that gas sold due to the price of the gas and renewable energy credits that are available and money that we can buy, that we can get back for producing bio-CNG, but it will have a greater impact on offsetting greenhouse gases because it will be the cleanest transportation fuel available, save for solar generated electric vehicles. So we invested what ended up being $28 million up front. And earlier this year, we began putting gas into the pipeline. And one of the nice caveats to the story is that gas is purchased by Quick Trip. So what we have is a Wisconsin company purchasing that bio-CNG for sale. And so it's a nice circular economy that we're able to have there to offset greenhouse gas and really rebound our money. We figure about 4-ish years, that plant will have paid for itself. And after that, we'll be generating several $1 million annually in profit for county taxpayers. It just so happened, I mentioned the manure digesters, that this ended up being a real godsend for our policies of facilitating the development of manure digesters. As you may know, we first started getting into the business. We don't own them, but we facilitate the marriage between farmers and investors who want to develop a digester, and then we'll be partners getting it off the ground. This began as one of our lakes cleanup efforts, because part of the process for bringing in and preparing the manure and putting it through the digester process is the removal of phosphorus, which helps us clean up our lakes because there's less phosphorus runoff into the lakes. The positive byproduct from that was that the methane gas from the anaerobic digestion was, as I mentioned, burned to generate renewable electricity. But the economics that we suffered from at the landfill are facing the digester owners too. They can't make a profit generating electricity with that gas anymore. So when we built our plant at the landfill, we built it so that it could accept compressed natural gas that's trucked in, because we wanted to have a place where our digesters, if they chose to produce compressed natural gas rather than burning it for electricity, could bring it in and sell it and benefit from the same economics. There are 2 digesters right now. One of them has already made the conversion, and we're hoping the other will too. But even beyond that, the economics, because of the greater amount of money people can get for that bio-CNG, the economics have improved so much that we're really excited about the potential of developing a number of more digesters, which will be not only good for reducing greenhouse gases, but as I mentioned, it's really important for our lakes cleanup work. So we've done a lot, and we continue to do a lot in the county. We also fuel about half of our highway fleet now with that bio-CNG. So those big snow plows you see, those big Dane County highway trucks, about half of them are running on what used to be trash that was deposited across the street from the highway garage. And that also costs us about $1.50 a gallon. So again, we're saving money and we're offsetting climate change emissions. So as we look internally and continue to try to do everything we can, we felt it was important to use our lessons and our ability, being countywide government, to convene people and bring them together to develop a countywide plan for reduction of greenhouse gases. So a few years ago, I created what was referred to earlier, the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. And we hired as our first director a gentleman named Keith Riopel, who some of you may know or be familiar with. Keith had a very long career in the environmental movement, and he had the respect of both climate activists as well as the utilities and people in government, all the folks you need to work with to really push policy forward. So Keith took the job as the first director of our office, and he convened people from across the spectrum. And Kathy will get into a little more detail about that, but it was climate activists, it was utilities, it was business, it was farmers, it was community-based organizations, and came up with Dane County's Climate Action Plan. It took like 2 or 3 years, Kathy, to put together. And right around the time that it came to fruition and we were printing it, Keith reached the stage in his career where he was ready to retire. And so when Keith retired, thank goodness for us, he had been working with Kathy, who had been working with him in our office. And Kathy applied for the job, and Kathy recently became our new director. And the timing couldn't have been better, because we've gone from the stage of putting the plan together to the implementation stage now of actually making it work, because we obviously don't want this to sit on the shelf. We want to make a difference across the community. And Kathy's professional history is in implementation and working with renewables and energy efficiency. So the synchronicity there was really important and worked very well for us. And so what we're doing is we're talking to folks across the county, be it commissions like yours, different environmental organizations, people in the faith community, the business community, and first of all, letting folks know what we're doing, giving them some more insight about the plan, and then hopefully enlisting your partnership in making this real, because the model we envision for putting this into action is one, if you think of community organizing and reaching out and tapping into groups and like-minded people, so we can go on the ground, business to business, door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, and enact the policies that have been identified in the climate action plan that can get us to where we need to be. And while we're doing that, and as we're doing it, and after we're doing it, we also want to be a model for other communities, because this can be replicated across the state, across the nation, and so much can be done. And because of some of the things I mentioned earlier, most of the action we've seen has been at the local level. But that's okay, because that's where a lot of this action happens. We still need the federal government to act, that's for sure. We need other nations to act. We need the state to act, but there's a heck of a lot we can do to move our fight to push back climate change forward. So that's why we're really excited to be here tonight, and I appreciate so much that you're taking the time to listen to us, and hopefully we'll be partnering moving forward. And I think I'll turn it over to Kathy now, and she can talk a little more nuts and bolts about the plan itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks so much, Joe. As Joe said, it's terrific to be here with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen. I think it's up. Head nod, someone? Yep, cool. Doesn't look like it's in presentation mode though. Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the plan, give you a little bit of a sense of what's in it and what we're doing at this point. So as the county executive said, Keith and Joe assembled this group, the Dane County Climate Council, 38 organizations to develop the plan. And whenever I talk about the plan, I think it's important to make 2 points. First, at the very first meeting of the council, the executive came and he laid out the challenge that he wanted the art of the possible. He didn't want a council to sit around for months and complain about what the federal government wasn't doing, or what counties weren't allowed to do. He said, figure it out. What can we do and how can we get it done? And I think one of the things that's noteworthy about this plan is that it is so pragmatic and so based in the science. The other important thing to know is that council, as they started talking about reducing emissions, there was broad recognition that we could do that in ways that generated co-benefits. So we can address equity and justice, we can deliver economic, health, and ecosystem benefits while we reduce emissions. We can become more resilient, we can address the rural-urban divide. So really, we're looking at a way to do this that's very much a win-win-win-win-win. When you do a plan like this, where you start is with your baseline. Where are our emissions? So this is a pie chart of our baseline is 2016. In 2016, everything in Dane County produced, all of our activity together produced 7.5 million metric tons of carbon equivalents. And the pie chart shows how that breaks down. So the biggest piece of our countywide emissions comes from electricity. It's important to remember that in Wisconsin, most electricity comes from burning coal and natural gas. The 2 yellowish pieces of the pie next to the electricity that are labeled residential and commercial, that's the natural gas we burn in our buildings to make buildings warm and to heat water. So a little bit over half of all of our emissions are from the built environment. And then the next biggest piece there is from transportation. And I give you that just to give you a context of, where we're going to focus, because where those biggest emissions are. The other important thing to know when you're thinking about a plan like this is what's already happening. So we've been burning fossil fuels in an aggressive way as humans for about 100 years. We've already impacted our climate. And the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, UW scientists have taken these global climate science models and boiled them down to Wisconsin so we can see what the local impacts are. The bottom line for us is that it's going to get hotter and wetter in Dane County. Both of those are really important things for us to think about as local governments, because both affect the well-being of our citizens. So that's kind of the context. So then, to get to the plan, Keith assembled about a dozen subject matter working groups. That's actually how I first became involved. My background is energy efficiency, and I was on the energy efficiency subject matter working group. He asked each of those working groups to look at best practices nationally, in some cases globally, and to recommend what could Dane County do to see real action in that area. Ultimately, the groups generated more than 100 recommendations, and it's not very practical for me to talk about all of those, so I'm going to talk about them in kind of a broad characterization. Most of the recommendations are about reducing our emissions. And there's three big ways we reduce emissions. First, we become more efficient. That's about energy efficiency, but it's also about water efficiency. It's about food waste. It's crazy to move resources around the country or the world to Wisconsin and then throw them away. That's just a crazy waste of emissions. The second leg of that emissions stool is that we want to get the energy we still need to use from clean sources. So we want to get our electricity from solar and wind. The exec talked about, we want to get the natural gas we keep using from landfills and manure rather than new natural gas sources. And then finally, we bring all that together by transforming our buildings and our transportation system to use those renewable energy sources. So that's the emissions piece of this. We want to reduce emissions at the same time as a county, particularly as a county with significant green space. We have opportunity to sequester more carbon emissions in our plants and soil. So we want to think about how to increase our tree canopy, to do things in terms of ag practices like continuous cover that enable us to store more carbon in the ground. So taken all together, what the pieces are that are in the recommendations. To understand the impact of all of those recommendations, we did a final exercise where Keith went to each of the working groups and said, if you accomplish all of these recommendations, what's the outcome? And that generated this list of outcomes. So for example, there probably are in the climate action plan 15 or 20 recommendations around growing solar energy in the county. The outcome is that we want 1,200 megawatts installed by 2030 and wind and solar to meet our load by 2045. So that's the outcome. These are ambitious outcomes, but they're achievable ambitious outcomes. We could take these outcomes and go back to the climate model and say, well, if we do these things, how does that affect our overall emissions? And the news there is really good. So remember, we start out with that 7.5 million metric tons of carbon equivalents. If we hit all of those outcomes by 2030, we reduce our emissions by about half, which is really significant. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we should be reducing our emissions 43% by 2030. We're a little bit ahead of that, which is good because these are all ambitious. The other thing, though, I want you to notice about this graph is that this current plan does not get us to zero by 2050. My graph doesn't even go to zero. There's a lot of natural gas in buildings and gas and diesel vehicles still on the road in this plan. And some of that's about what's cost effective, how fast. Remember, this is science-based and pragmatic. We're not presuming that magically everything's going to change. The math has to work. Probably in 7-ish years, we have to do an update to the plan, and that's going to give us another chunk where things will be more cost effective. What's most important right now, though, is this first decade, this critical decade to 2030. And the reality is we have a plan in Dane County that can get us where we need to go by 2030. So that's super exciting. As the executive said, I'm an implementer. So, for me, it's like, yep, there's a plan, but let's get it done. What did we get done so far? The plan is really just the beginning. Since we issued the plan in April, we've been doing engagement. We're doing work around how we make it easier for folks to do their parts, how we track all of this. And I want to talk about just a couple of examples before we open it up for questions. This is a page on our website. DaneClimateAction.org is how you can go directly to our website. You can also, of course, get there through the county. We've got a page there where we've got whole sets of resources for individuals, businesses, and communities. Things that help folks get started on their path to make it easier. And I want to showcase just a couple of things here. First is the Sustainability Leaders Collaborative. So this is something that we launched in 2019. This is a joining together of local governments and local government leaders across Dane County to share best practices, to learn from each other. The photo here is this summer we did an event for fleet staff from across the county where that's a Dane County RNG snowplow, where our highway department folks talked about their RNG equipment. The City of Madison's fleet staff brought electric vehicles, and fleet folks from across the county got to come and literally kick the tires and talk to other fleet folks. It was a really good event for that kind of pragmatic information sharing, and we're always looking for more opportunities like that to help local governments overcome. This event came out of conversations where we were hearing from local governments that fleet folks were really skeptical about these technologies. So we knew the best way to overcome that was to let them talk to other fleet folks. So that's one of the things that we're doing. Another thing that you should all be aware of that's been around for a while, but we're trying to really get more attention to this, is property assessed clean energy financing. So this is financing that any business who owns their property can get a loan through PACE to do energy efficiency upgrades or a renewable energy system. And what's really important about this financing is its positive cash flow. So if you did a project that saved you $500 a month on your utility bill, your repayment might be $400 a month. So you're actually making $100 a month while that upgrade pays for itself. And one of the ways we're really interested in working with local governments is thinking about how we increase awareness of the program among all the entities that can take advantage of it. I'll just add there that nonprofits can do this too if they own their facility. So that's PACE. The last thing I want to draw attention to, and I saw on your agenda, you'll talk about this a little bit later yourselves too. We launched a program this last year, the Climate Champions program, to recognize entities that are leading. So the reality is the more we provide positive reinforcement for our leaders, the more action we're going to see. So this program, we recognized entities who are energy efficient, who are doing great on water issues, etc. Fitchburg, in the end, has 4 facilities that qualified as energy champions. Well, 3 facilities in your overall water program, which is fantastic. Your plaque is literally today in the mail to you. I am super excited to say the plaques were delayed, and it's been a hardship in my brain, but Bill and Claudia and I have had conversations about that. It really is in the mail now. And our aim, we'll open this program again soon. The aim here is to get everybody moving in the right direction. Be assured, I'm saying to other communities, look at all the cool things Fitchburg's doing. They're all over our map, the cool stuff they're doing. You should be on the map too, as that is a way to motivate some of your peers into more action. And with that, I am going to stop sharing so I can see all of you again, and we can hopefully open it up for a little bit of questions.
Kathy, I have a question. It's something that we've struggled with in Fitchburg. What are your plans for helping buildings that are not owner occupied and the owner does not pay the utilities?
Yeah, it's certainly more of a challenge. I think I think long term, we need to develop some program models that are really responsive to that market. Part of it might be helping tenants be smarter about the energy cost of facilities they're choosing. You know, can we create some ability for tenants to be looking for those high efficiency spots? But we also need to make it a lot easier for landlords. We're currently involved in some pilot work across the county, looking at this in the, not in the business market, but in the residential market. So trying to work with smaller landlords in the residential market to increase the efficiency of what we think of as like workforce housing. And I'm sort of hopeful that some of that is going to help us. I mean, a lot of the landlords of these buildings don't have capacity to figure out energy efficiency programs. We've got to make it a lot easier for them. And I'm a little bit hopeful that some of that work we're doing on the residential side might point to some opportunities. Those landlords, though, could use PACE. You know, they could figure out a way to do that with their tenants.
They really don't have incentive though, because they're not paying the bill.
Right. Their incentive is, do they want to keep certain tenants? Do they want to, and they're paying some energy bill, but they probably aren't paying enough of it to, you're right, it's a challenge. I mean, the efficiency industry has never figured this one out, kind of thing. I think one of the things, so I believe that now after the election, it's highly likely we're going to see some increased opportunities for innovative programs and stimulus funding around efficiency. And this is one of those areas that there might be opportunity for us to experiment with something with some federal funds. So for me, it's good to know that's on your radar too, as a thing to, I will circle back to Phil and we'll have some chats about what maybe we could think about there.
Great. Good. Thank you.
I'll go next.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, just thinking about, the things that we do, we've done a lot of things related to community outreach. We do a lot of recycling events within the community. We try to hold a lot of sustainability events as a commission. What could we do as a resource conservation commission to best help move this initiative forward?
Want me to
Go ahead.
make the pitch? You know the pitch I'm going to make. So one of the things we're formulating now, it's kind of in its, I don't know if you'd call it infant phase, but something we really want to do is, this is getting back to the remarks I made about kind of the community organizing model that we're looking at. I'm really high on PACE. I think there's a lot of potential. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for owner-occupied residential, but for churches, synagogues, temples, nonprofits who own their own buildings, and businesses, they're all able to utilize this. And this is as Kathy said, no money out of pocket. Put money in your pocket, and then be able to brag about the fact that you have solar panels in a high efficiency building, which for businesses is really great, right? Because you want to be doing the right thing, and you want people to know you're doing the right thing. So we're starting to look at the groups like yourselves that we meet with, and other organizations, of looking at doing this community by community, and working with, say, if it were your group and others in Fitchburg, to put together a plan of action. How do we approach all of the houses of worship in Fitchburg? How do we find out and approach the nonprofits who own buildings in Fitchburg? What is our plan going to be for reaching out to the businesses in Fitchburg? Who's going to do that? How are we going to identify all of those? And Kathy and I have been talking about what then do we present them with once we get in the door? Because we know that, especially for businesses, they've got a lot on their mind, especially now coming out of the pandemic. We need to figure something out that's as turnkey as possible. to walk in and be able to make a connection with a business owner. A lot of this will be, everyone here probably knows a person or two who owns a business or goes to their church or et cetera. And we're going to need a lot of people on the ground to help us knock on those doors, get a meeting with the business owner, and go through the materials with them and say, look, you can start saving money and saving the planet right now, and it will take very little, if any, effort on your part. And so we're looking at that kind of help is something that will be really crucial when we get the programmatic piece of it more together, so that we can give people a quick training, have them have the materials that are needed, and then identify who knows whom where and track that. So that's something a little more in the future, but I think organization like that is going to be critical moving forward. And I know I see some people like Kim on this call who I know who is familiar with this type of community organizing and getting people together and going out and knocking on doors. So those types of partnerships, and folks in the local communities know the other folks in their communities best. For example, we're working with the Council of Churches and trying to tap into those faith groups. But that type of partnership is something that's going to be critical moving forward.
Good, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Well, Kathy and Executive Parisi, we all appreciate you guys coming in here today to talk about this. I think it's an incredible plan. I think you guys have a lot to brag about. And, I think, money talks, but definitely talking to groups like us, talking around the county, talking to people, really persuade them to, get the ball rolling. Because like you said, it's once you get the ball rolling and some incentives on the table, stuff's going to start happening. So we do appreciate you coming in, and it's inspired me. I don't know if it's inspired everybody else, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
it's really helpful, when all of us here individually realize that we're not alone, and there are a whole bunch of like-minded people who are ready to go out there and make a difference. So thank you all. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I also
Thank
want
you.
to, I'd like to commend you for everything that you've done so far. We took a tour of the landfill area, several of us last year. I mean, it's extremely impressive. And the solar fields, and I mean, it really, I think it really helps everybody else, all the residents of the county and hopefully the state, to show what can be done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like with the landfill, for example, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but we really see that as not only important to us, but it's relative to what I was talking about before about how important it is to be a model for others, because we were the first to do it, and most units of government are pretty risk averse, but now they can look to this and see that someone has done it, and not only did it succeed, is we're making a lot of money with it too. And so we have a lot of people come and visit us, and we offer technical support, and we would like nothing more than to see every landfill in the country doing what we're doing. So that's the multiples of good that can happen from all of the work that we do locally.
Yep.
I hope you guys get the biggest medal of all, really. The medal.
Hey, it's rewarding to be able to do the work. So
Yeah.
we appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
again.
coming, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Joe and Kathy.
You guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
They were right on time.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I think it's been shared before, but just in case, when I send out the minutes after this meeting, I'm also going to include a link to the climate action plan that was released last year. I'm pretty sure that's been shared before, but just in case it's disappeared in your inbox or anything, I think it's well worth looking through if you haven't. It's really comprehensive, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Well, thank you, Phil, for coordinating them coming in to present. I think that was excellent to start the year off. All right, unless there's any other good discussion topics or items to talk about, I think we can move on to item 4B, draft MS4 Public Education and Outreach Plan. I think there's some material in our packet that we can refer to, but I'll hand it over to Claudia.
Sorry about that, unmuting myself. Thank you. So yes, there is information in the packet. It starts on page 21. I'll just go through this as briefly as I can. Just some background information. The city has a municipal separate storm sewer system, which means that in the urbanized areas, we have curb and gutter that leads to pipes, which eventually goes to our natural water resources. And since we have a municipal separate storm sewer system, which is called an MS4, we have a permit from DNR with requirements that we're supposed to meet in terms of treatment of the water, that sort of thing. One of the requirements is to have a public education and outreach plan specifically written up. Also, just to go back a minute, we had a new permit come out in 2019, and as part of that permit, we're supposed to have an MS4 public education and outreach plan for this year. So that's why you haven't seen a plan like this before, because it is a new requirement. But I think it's really great as a way to structure our outreach activities. So that's kind of the purpose of this plan and why it's being created and why you haven't seen one like this before. And then another piece of information that will be useful as you're reviewing this plan is who MAMSWAP is and what our relationship with MAMSWAP is. So MAMSWAP stands for the Madison Municipal Area Stormwater Partnership. And basically it's 22 entities throughout the Dane County area, and we pool resources in order to meet the public education and outreach requirements of our MS4 permit, or at least to partially meet those requirements. So you might see in this table, I have a column called, who's doing this work? And the option is MAMSWAP or in-house or a combination of the two. So the work that MAMSWAP does, we also fund that work. The 22 partners fund that work, so we're able to take credit for that work. So that's just some background information. And these are the list of things that I was thinking we would tackle in 2021. So this first line item here is a storm drain mural program. So the program is something that MAMSWAP does, and it's put on by MAMSWAP. But this year I wanted to apply for that grant. I think that there's a really good spot in front of the new school at Terra Vesa where we could put a mural, and that would be a really good education opportunity. Actually, I applied for that grant last year, but the timing of when the school was built was available for this didn't line up with when they were going to do the mural. So we weren't quite ready last year, but I think this is something we can do this year. So that's why it's MAMSWAP and in-house, because MAMSWAP runs the overall program, but we'll be the ones applying to it. So this next item is a clean sweep local event. So if you're unfamiliar with clean sweep, it's basically the place where people should go to get rid of hazardous waste, hazardous household waste would go to clean sweep. And we were looking for a way to make that more readily available to Fitchburg residents. One thing that we talked about in RCC was using our the dollars that we collected as part of the CDRR deposit program to host a clean sweep event. So that's something that I'm looking into. it's funny that we had that idea because it's also on MAMSWAP's agenda for the year to have a local clean sweep event. So unclear if we'll be able to do ours this year. Because I would want, if we did an event using our dollars, I would want that to be a Fitchburg only event, since I would want our dollars to be for Fitchburg residents, versus if MAMSWAP does this, it would be open to anyone, and likely there would not be a reimbursement for folks attending. So we'll see how that pans out. If Clean Sweep does not have the capacity to do 2 events, then we'll just let MAMSWAP do their event this year, and maybe we'll be able to do it next year. But either way, we'll get credit for it. If we do our own, or if MAMSWAP does it, we can take credit for it either way. Although obviously it would be better if we can do it in Fitchburg for our residents, but more to come. Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned a couple meetings ago that we had a clean sweep in Fitchburg, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. And at the time, the people that run clean sweep, we got a grant to do it. So we had to, it was a matching grant. I think it cost 20,000 total, and Fitchburg put up 10. I'm not sure about those numbers. But they were pretty clear that they wouldn't do it again. And we wouldn't get a grant again, and they wouldn't do it again. I thought they said they wouldn't do it again in Fitchburg because they would rather bring it to communities who aren't as close to the clean sweep facility as we are. So you might want to check in to see if they would even be willing to do that. I can't remember, you probably could go back in the minutes. I can't remember if we charged residents. I think that we charged them the same thing as if they went to the Dane County landfill. And I can't remember if we checked whether they were a Fitchburg resident or not. But if we charged them the same as if they went to the Dane County landfill, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we don't need to check their residency.
So what was the $20,000 for, if that wasn't to supplement their cost?
Their cost does not, the cost that residents pay when we take something to clean sweep does not begin to cover the disposal cost. We had a pretty long discussion about that. So the cost, maybe look back in the minutes to be sure. But as I recall, the cost was partly disposal and partly their staff time to set it up. We had it in the garage over by the recycling site. We had it in the garage over there. It was a drive-through event. It went really well. It was extremely well received, and I would love to do that again. I'm just not sure that Sweep is going to be a willing participant.
And I think things have changed since 5 years ago when you were talking to Clean Sweep, because they actually approached me last year to see if we would be willing to partner on an event last year. And the reason why I said no last year is because we were canceling all of our live events and it didn't make sense to plan last year. But I was thinking this year, maybe we could revisit that conversation. So I'm not sure if they had staff turnover or what, but they seem to be willing to work with us. Because they're very interested in doing another event like that.
Good. Great.
Yeah, it seems to me that it might even have been longer than 5 years ago. I feel like this might have been 2012, 2013.
Yeah, it was before I was on, and so it was definitely longer than 5 years.
Okay.
So maybe they have had some staff change over and maybe their policy has changed a little bit. Like accessibility is key though, I think. And so if we have an event locally, even though, the Dane County landfill is not very far away and the program is very easy to follow once you get out there. I've taken some things out there myself. But the accessibility and making it local makes it, and then, it's also an opportunity for us to educate, like in the future, you can take your stuff out to the landfill. So I think we could do a little bit more outreach on that as well.
Do you think we could add it to our recycle event? Is that a possibility?
I was thinking that that's how we would do it. I'm not sure if that would be too confusing and too many different things going on the same day. That's the only consideration there.
It's a great idea, Shelley, but we had to provide staff to do some things and Clean Sweep. Clean Sweep obviously handled all the hazardous waste, but we did the check-in and the traffic routing and stuff. So I don't think that we have the people power to do both.
Yeah, and I think for an educational opportunity, I mean, it might be a little confusing. I'm very excited about the possibility of doing something like this because when I was out touring, the landfill and just seeing how the Dane County one is set up, I just don't think a lot of people are familiar with it or aware of it. And so I think we would have a great opportunity to do a lot of education on that. And then depending on, like Diane said, if they did it at the garage last time, if we needed to be in a different location too, would be something to consider.
And, now that we're kind of talking it through, if the recycling day, if combining it with the recycling day event really isn't a practical solution, I really like the idea of having a drive-through event, and that kind of weatherproofs the event as well. If it rains or anything like that, then we wouldn't have to cancel. And the garages have lots of doors that can be opened, so ventilation is pretty good in there. So I like that idea. More to come on that. Next thing here is the Leaf-Free Streets program. So I think this year we'll, of course, continue with promoting that program and having signs available to hand out to residents. MAMSWAP and in-house is listed there because MAMSWAP, they're the ones who run the program and create the signs. But then, of course, we advertise it in-house and then we use our staff to deliver the signs to folks who request it. Plant Dane Native Plant Program and free native plants for school and community projects. This is a program that MAMSWAP and Dane County have been doing for many years. Basically, they sell native plants at a discounted rate with the intention of encouraging people to put in rain gardens or other native plantings in their yards. We were selected as one of the municipalities to participate in an Adopt a Storm Drain pilot. So the concept behind this is that residents would be able to adopt a storm drain in front of their home or where they can adopt it wherever they would like to. And they would just be asked maybe once a month to go out there and make sure that there's no litter and that the storm drain is clear of leaves or any debris, and remove that and dispose of it or compost it properly. So that's a new program, and we're really excited about it. We're going to be working with their GIS team and then using the outreach materials to provide to our residents.
Claudia,
sorry. Go ahead, Diane.
I think that's a great idea, and I think by publicizing it, it might make people more aware. Maybe they won't adopt a storm drain, but maybe it will make them more aware to keep the gutters or their storm drain area clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great idea. Do you think that you'd have something that you'd attach to the storm drain saying that this has been adopted, or?
I do think that's a really good idea. That's something that has been on my radar, and Dakota actually thought of that too, and reached out to to Crystal Campbell. She's the MAMSWAP coordinator for us, and she said that was actually already something she was thinking about as well. So I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, but I've seen plaques, little round plaques that folks can put on storm drains, and I think having that out there with like a website or something that people can go to. If they stumble upon it, they can go to the website and learn more. I think that would be really cool.
Good.
Well, and I was gonna say that this is something that would be very exciting to kind of propose to neighborhood associations. I mean, I could see that this would be something I could take back to our neighborhood association and say, hey, you know, this would be a really great program for us to get involved in. And, you know, people in our neighborhood, you know, it would be a very easy thing, something that our folks could do. So I really like the idea of having something, you know, that would say, you know, this is adopted by or whatever. But I think that would be a really great way for us to get our neighborhoods involved, as well as an educational component as well.
Great. So more to come on that. The plan, I believe, is we're going to work on the GIS piece first, because the way it's going to look is you'll be able to go to a map and then you'll have available the stormwater infrastructure, and all of the storm drains will be, I guess, dots on the map, and you'll be able to click on them. And if you want to adopt it, you can say, adopt this storm drain, and you can upload a little photo, that kind of thing. But so that technical piece has to happen first, and then the outreach will happen second. The goal is to be ready to do the outreach piece this fall.
Perfect.
So the next thing that's being proposed is our annual erosion control training. This is prepared in-house, and it's available to construction workers and designers in the area. And I know last year folks were interested in seeing what this was all about, and it occurs during the day, during a work day, so it's a little difficult for folks to get into the city library if you work Monday through Friday. But this year it's going to be online, so if anyone from the RCC is interested in attending, I will send out that information.
Good.
Another thing that I would like to work on this year is putting up a sign over at the Burn Pond retrofit project. I think it's a really great project that was done, and it's a really interesting facility that's been created there with the 3 cells and the pretreatment, and then the filter strip, and then the bioretention basin at the end. And I think it would just be really nice to have a sign that explains to residents in that neighborhood how that facility works. So that's another thing we're going to be working on this year. Next, the Wisconsin Saltwise program and salt certification trainings. That's something that the Wisconsin Saltwise Partnership does, which the city is a part of that organization. So we're going to be promoting those activities, and we'll also be sending municipal staff. There are two different programs that we would send staff to for training. One is the APWA, the American Public Works Association Rodeo, is what they call it, ROAD, Rodeo, where folks can learn about appropriate application of salts and winter maintenance. And the other recommendation, the other training that they might go to instead, it would be one or the other, would be the Saltwise training put on by Madison. But the recommendation is initial training, and then every 3 years after that. So that's something we're tracking to make sure we are keeping up with that.
Claudia, can I raise a question on that?
Sure.
Last year, I think we worked on, I think it was last year, obviously my time frame is a little bit messed up, but I think we worked on a letter that was going to be sent out to businesses about the Saltwise program, and I don't remember if that was sent out or not, but I'm wondering now, maybe we can revisit that letter and send it to businesses that we notice now are really overdoing it on salt? Would you think that would be appropriate?
So that letter was sent in 2019, and that was a partnership between us and MMSD. Actually, they're very interested in reducing salt that gets to their treatment plant. So the purpose of that letter was to make folks aware of a grant program that MMSD has available for businesses to retrofit their water softeners. So that was kind of the purpose of that, and it was basically entirely prepared by MMSD staff, and then we just worked with them to actually send it out because they felt that it would be more impactful coming from the city of Fitchburg rather than MMSD, which a lot of people haven't heard of. So that was kind of the partnership there. In terms of doing direct mailings for salt certification, I mean, it's something that we could consider. It's not something that I had in the plan for this year, and I think we already have a lot on the plan. So it's certainly something we could consider, but I wouldn't want to just add it because I'm already thinking we have a lot.
Well, one of the items on here says to promote salt-wise resources and practices to businesses, residents, schools, organizations, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't this fall right under there? I mean, couldn't there be a tactful letter sent to the businesses that are getting a little bit carried away? And actually, I think some of these businesses use salt-certified contractors, salt-wise certification contractors. Couldn't we, as a way of promoting this, couldn't we address business, not a canvas, not canvases all businesses, but the ones that we think that are causing more problems?
I have an idea about how you could potentially go about that. Diane, if maybe you could reach out to the Fitchburg Chamber of Commerce and see if they might be able to kind of like invite, like maybe you could offer to kind of come and talk about this Saltwise at one of their meetings if they would be open to that, because they meet regularly and I know it's all virtual. So maybe just going to the meeting and sharing some information might be a good way to kind of reach out to that audience.
Okay, good idea.
That's a great idea.
So what I had in mind for that promotional material was our normal putting it on the Fitchburg Star page and then our Facebook page and our Green e-newsletter. So I think that's more what I had in mind for this year. I can certainly put that kind of in the ideas bank for potentially next year. Just thinking about staff capacity, if we add something, I would like to remove something from this list as well.
Maybe one of the, like if maybe Diane could take it on. I don't know if you'd be willing to do that, Diane, but
I think the difficult part is putting together the list of businesses to send it to. It's not drafting the letter.
Maybe it's just something we keep on the back burner for future year.
Well, actually, Claudia, I wasn't thinking of sending it to all businesses, but more the ones that, I could give you the addresses of a couple that I think could use a little bit of enlightenment. So, just kind of a generic letter. By the way, something like that.
All right, yeah, if there's just a handful of businesses that you have in mind, I think that's something we could work on getting out.
Okay, good. And I like the Chamber of Commerce. Saltwise, I wouldn't do the presentation because I'm not well enough versed in that topic, but I think that's a good idea. And maybe somebody from MMSD would do the presentation.
Yeah.
Property managers are a big one. I've noticed going up to condos this winter, lots of salt. So I don't know if that's something you've ever focused on, Claudia, but property management companies might be one to focus. I don't know.
We're about 6 minutes over, so just want to do a little time check.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap it up, this last page, just summarize the different topic areas and then provides the definition of the active versus passive mechanisms. And our requirement is to do at least 2 active mechanisms, and listing here, we have 4 planned for this year, and they're listed out here. Did anyone else have any comments or feedback on the plan for this year?
I thought this was a great plan, and I can't imagine, I mean, it must have been an incredible amount of work, and just kudos to you for putting it together.
Thank you.
Well done, Claudia.
Yeah, I think it's a great plan. I think, I don't know if it was your intent to maybe hint at us to keep it at kind of some of these things in our pocket to help out with in the future, but I think our group is definitely could be involved with pretty much every one of these. But yeah, excellent. Good list. I guess my only comment would be, I guess I see the checkbox here to see, to track your progress throughout the year, but I guess we'll revisit it at the end of the year and see how far you get. All right, get back to the agenda here. All right, let's move on to 4C. And as Executive Parisi kind of hinted at earlier, Fitchburg was named a climate champion for 2020. I don't know if you guys had a little presentation to state or just to have 10 minutes of celebration.
Yay.
We can take as much celebration as we want. We're a few minutes behind schedule, so we could maybe limit it to like 8 minutes. But yeah, Joe kind of hinted at it a little bit. Claudia and I filled out and sent in a couple of applications in the fall when we found out that the Office of Energy and Climate Change was doing this Climate Champions recognition program, and actually an extra bit of recognition for Claudia, because I looked at it and thought, oh gosh, I don't know if we have time for this, and she filled out the water application and reached out to me and said it was really easy, don't worry about it, go ahead. So then I filled out a few for energy. So yeah, they have 5 different levels. You can either be an emerging champion or anywhere from 1 to 4 star. So the whole city, and after I talk for just a minute, I'll let Claudia give a little more detail on this, but the whole city was given 3-star level for water savings. And then we also had 2 buildings, the public library and the West Fire Station, that were recognized as 1-star energy saving champions, and the East Fire Station is an emerging champion. At least on the energy side, that's just based on percent of, essentially using a certain percentage less energy than a standard building in that type. And for water savings, I believe that is based on implementing a certain number of water savings programs. I think, Claudia, you can certainly address that better than I can.
Sure. And I also just pulled up this website, which is kind of a neat little website where you can check out not only Fitchburg's awards that we've received, but other municipalities as well. So you can click through here and see how we're doing and how we stack up to our efforts, versus other people. And I think when they were talking earlier about positive reinforcement for emerging leaders, it also helps us know where we are. So I'd encourage you to take a moment to just take a look at our areas that we're being recognized for, and then just check out the neighboring municipalities as well. So energy use, the 3 buildings that Phil mentioned are here in Fitchburg, and then you can see other buildings that were included. And then you have to, at first I couldn't find the water plaque area, and it's because this page that it goes to is only energy use, so you have to tab over to the water savings area to find the municipalities that were awarded for water. And so here's Fitchburg here. That's a photograph of the Burn Pond retrofit program, and the area that's inundated there is the bioretention basin, which the water is being captured there to encourage infiltration. So that was just one of the things that was included in the application. Also, the Seminole Village Pond expansion, which is upstream of Dunn's Marsh. It was expanded to provide additional water treatment before reaching that water resource. We also talked about the fact that our staff is certified either via the APWA rodeo or Saltwise for winter application. And then we talked about some of our other efforts, the erosion control training, which I think has been really, really valuable for the industry in this area. I think we had 47 people attend last year, which really shows that I don't think so. There's a whole lot of just quick and easy training available in this area, and we're kind of filling that need. There were just some other smaller things that were mentioned. City Hall was retrofitted with water bottle filling stations this last year. That's all I can think of offhand, but yeah, very exciting to receive recognition and a small moment to say kudos to us, and there's more to do.
Have we gotten much press on this? I thought I remembered seeing a little article about this. Could it have been in the last issue of the Star?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the January issue had an article on this.
Yeah.
But did it give the details, like where we got that, like the Fitchburg West Fire Station and the library and?
I believe it specified the buildings. I don't think it went into any of the detail like Claudia just did on any of the water savings efforts specifically, or the building energy savings. But I'd have to go back and reread it to be sure.
Well, if you want to toot your own horn, that might make a nice article for the Star.
It could. It definitely it got a good half a page in there for January, but
Oh, it
yeah,
did?
if we feel.
I haven't read January's Star yet, so.
Oh, yep. I don't remember if I still have it up here on my. No, I don't think so. Had it up for a few days, but yeah, it's got a good half a page in the January edition of the Star.
Well, then they probably would want to do something more. So sorry.
But hey, somebody tooted our horn for us.
Yeah, good.
So that's also great.
Nice job. Thanks for
Let me just
applying
pull
for
this
it.
up and yeah, so I can just do the facets of screen shares just so you can see kind of the extent of it here.
Look at Ron.
Oh, hey, Ron has
Oh,
it.
there we go. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good spread.
Yeah, real nice spread.
In my RCC report tomorrow at the council, I think I was going to mention the Fitchburg Star article along with this, but actually I might just pull up the map, Claudia, that you just showed, since it's such a nice visual. I think I might just do that, considering use the visual medium of being online.
There you go.
I think I'll do that as well.
And the link to that, Gabriella, is in the packet, just so you know.
Awesome.
Yeah, excellent. I remember reading that in the Star and thinking, yeah, we should be proud. I think they commented on all the facilities that are out there, and so yeah, I think great job applying for it, and I think it's well deserved for sure.
Yeah, and it just kind of whets our appetite. So it's nice to be recognized for the things we've already done, but as Claudia mentioned, there's a lot of stuff out there that other cities and towns are doing that we haven't yet. So it definitely is a bit of a motivator as well to keep on pushing.
Super.
Good job, you guys.
Yeah,
Great job.
Going.
Okay, we're still 6 minutes behind.
I'm just
which
going to add
isn't
one
too
other
bad.
thing. I think it's great feedback for the council also to see that their investments are getting recognized. And as Phil said, it's great motivation to keep moving forward. So I think it's great recognition. Thank you for applying again.
Absolutely. We'll have to do more applications in the future. We got a taste for the award now. We were one of only 3 or 4 entities that got as many as 4 distinct recognitions. Nobody had more than that, so if we can keep ourselves at the top of the list there, that'd also be great.
Wow, you got to keep going for
That's
more.
right.
Right.
Nice. All right, let's keep moving. I know it's all good stuff, but still a lot of items to go. Let's go to 4D. Let's talk about pursuing a spring recycling event.
And,
I know.
and
Go
Nate,
ahead.
not to cut you off, but I do have some new information. I just checked my email before this meeting. And the mayor and the acting city administrator did have a chance to review my question on whether or not we would be allowed to have a spring recycling event. And they were of the feeling that they'd like to aim for the fall instead, just because hopefully by the fall we'll all be vaccinated and we can put the pandemic behind us. But just in an abundance of caution, they are not wanting to have a spring event. So I think we can make up some time on this agenda topic.
Well, it's going to be big because if people can't recycle in the spring, they're going to bring it all in the fall.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all of, not to mention last year's spring and fall.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've been
We're gonna
saving
need
up.
all hands on deck for that one.
Yes.
I think that's a really good choice. I'm glad that.
It might have to be a 2-day event.
I think it's a good decision, but maybe, I mean, based on what I've seen, let's try to get a jump on it and maybe do this in August or late July. Maybe August would be a safer bet, and get everybody scheduled because, you know, once things start to open up, Pelletari's going to be in big demand and the e-cycle people. So maybe we could get that on the calendar for August. Is that everybody okay with that?
We'll reach out this upcoming week to see what the availability is. I think it's a really good idea to be looking that far in advance because I think a lot of municipalities are going to be clamoring for those weekends as well.
Yeah, it might be a nice opportunity for us to write an article in the spring to write about what other people's options are, because this may be building up. I know a lot of people have more time to go through things in their house. And so if we could get an article out there with what people's options are, that might help a little bit with our workload come whenever this event happens.
Yeah, that's a good
If
idea.
anybody to write the article, I could write the article.
Well, we are looking for articles. I know we didn't have time to throw it on here. I was going to privately email, but I guess this is a call for articles. So, Chris, I know you had just written one, but I was also going to volunteer to write one for next month. So I'll follow it up with an email off meeting. So yeah, no, I think that's the right call. I think spring would be too soon. I think maybe going for a late summer event would be good. You know, we talked about doing a clean sweep, and yeah, definitely an article to keep everyone interested that one's coming up. But here's some things to do to dump off what you might have now. So I think we're good with that one. Thanks for keeping in touch with that, Claudia.
Claudia, would it be possible to forward that to me? Because I know we were working on some tree diversity event for the spring, summer, and I just want to make sure we're staying within the context of that we're not breaking those rules.
All right, forward what to you?
Well, just the email, are we just, no spring events whatsoever? I mean, around Arbor Day and so forth, we were going to do some socially distanced, like a tour where people could go through a park and look at things, where it's not really so much of a big city recycling event, but I don't know if there's any limitations from that perspective.
So the email was specific to the recycling event. I didn't ask about the Earth Day events or smaller events, but that's a good point. I should be asking that question as well. Because last year we weren't even able to have our waterway cleanups that were socially distanced.
Mhm.
I feel like probably this year that would be fine. I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'll forward you the email that I received, but it's specific to this event. I'll have to ask
Okay.
about those other events.
Well, if that's the case, don't worry about forwarding it. Just, ask about, some of those other things like the waterway cleanup. We're thinking about tree diversity and, we would stick, within any confines. I don't know if, each event may be a little bit different, but, obviously we're going to consider how to do it safely.
And I think it would be allowed just because I think I remember last fall there had a very small ribbon cutting, I think, for the bike path over McKee. So I think it would be allowed, but I'll double check.
Dane County just extended outdoor events to 50 people. So I don't know if that helps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good thinking, Chris. I think, definitely with our spring outreach time coming up, that'd be good to know now before we start planning. So thanks for reaching out for those items, Claudia. And if we need to provide a more detailed number of people or what kind of thing, I think we can put together something. Okay. Anything else with the new business items? Otherwise, we can keep moving to old business. Great. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. 5A, old business for the final 2020 annual report that, thinking back to last year, I think this was sent out for our comment, and I think we were able to provide comments, and I think, the intent here is just to kind of summarize everything or provide last comments, or I know it's 2 pages. I don't know if we have time to go through all of it, but Claudia, what was your intent for this one?
So usually we have a draft annual report and then we incorporate comments and then we provide the final annual report in a subsequent meeting. So that was the intent for this one. I just pulled it up in the packet and I realized there are a couple of comments still in here. I apologize. I thought these comments had been addressed. So I think we will need to put this in the next packet, potentially not, maybe as a 5-minute agenda item. I don't think a lot of discussion needs to be had on this because we've already seen it. The content hasn't changed significantly.
Usually this report is presented by the chair to the council. I don't know, Nate, if you got on the council's agenda, and if not, if you're not able to get time on their agenda, then Gabrielle could present it as soon as it's ready.
Yeah, let's discuss that offline, how the best way to go about that is.
Yeah, I'm guessing this with the next topic that we could bring both this annual report and the the calendar of events that wasn't on here due to this next topic too. So we'll maybe throw those two together in a topic just to kind of finalize them next time. So yeah, if anyone else has any other questions or comments to put in, I guess now's the time, but should have already been done. So let's keep moving. 7:56 here, so I guess we're back on time, but this next one might take a little bit. I forgot which meeting, which council meeting. I'm guessing it was the budget meeting. It was, but 5B to discuss potentially increasing the number of RCC meetings from our current 8 meetings per year to 10 per year, and I think that was a budget item request line. And I think I watched the video to see that it was approved, and I think that's to the extent of where we are right now. And I think Claudia and I were talking that to make it a formal, I think we'd all need a vote on on that, because I mean the budget is available for it. We just need to make it a goal kind of thing.
I'd
but
like
no,
I'd like to thank Gabriella for bringing that up to council. And you know, we discussed this in at some length before Gabriella did it, and decided that maybe, you know, if we don't need to meet, we won't meet. But we have our agendas are always so full, and our discussions are sort of cut short. I'd like to see us increase it to 10, and if, like I said, if it comes to July and there's really nothing to discuss, July is a bad example because that's budget time. So let's say if we come to November and there's nothing to discuss, then we just don't, you know, then we don't meet. But I think that the council has approved that budget for us to increase to 10, and I think it would be short-sighted for us to say, now we're gonna stick to 8.
One thing I also want to throw into the discussion as well is, one thing I thought might be a possibility is, since we have 2 staff members that staff this, that are, you know, cover very different areas, I don't know if we wanted to have 1 or 2 meetings a year that are dedicated to each topic. You know, we have 1 or 2 meetings a year that are really dedicated to stormwater, you know, that Claudia would staff, and then another 1 or 2 meetings a year that are staffed by Phil, and we focus on sustainability. And that way, potentially, we can make it a pseudo public hearing where we invite people to come and bring comments. Just an idea potentially of, number one, making sure that Claudia and Phil don't have to staff 2 more meetings. Like maybe we change it up a little bit. But then also maybe we could have an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper, because I know when we've wanted to get into discussions about stormwater, but sometimes we get sidetracked or we just run out of time. So that's one idea I wanted to throw out there.
yeah, I like it. It's kind of like a special meeting, but with not as much importance, I guess, for timing. But yeah, that's not a bad idea, Gabrielle.
Well, I appreciate you being, you know, thoughtful of staff members' time. I don't think I have a very strong opinion one way or another. I think staffing 2 more meetings versus 1 more meeting to me isn't a big difference. And it might just be logistically difficult to have only one topic or the other for a given meeting. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. I'm not sure, Phil, if you do.
I wouldn't say a strong opinion. I actually have the other committee that I staff, the bicycle committee, is looking at adding 2 meetings as well. So it looks like I may be going up 4 meetings from last year to this year, which is a little more significant. But yeah, if it just depends on what the commission wants to do, and you know, it certainly seems like we have more than enough content to fill out 2 more meetings most of the time. If we're looking at possibly streamlining things, maybe it makes sense. And I think for the most part, the last couple chairs have done a pretty good job of this, from what I can tell, of kind of having set at sort of meetings in these particular months we cover specific topics. I think especially that happens as you get towards the end and the start of the year. But maybe that would be a place to look at for possibly streamlining, is saying that, you know, we know that there are certain topics that are always going to be, you know, we're going to have an update on certain stormwater things and an update on specific sustainability things in these particular months. But yeah, otherwise I think the difficulty is, I love the idea of adding only 2 meetings to my schedule this year instead of 4, but things do come up so irregularly that it's tough to plan out in advance what month you would decide, you know, half a year ahead that Claudia is not going to be there or I'm not going to be there, and then we get close to it and realize, actually, what if we brought him in anyway?
I kind of like, I like Gabrielle's idea, but I thought maybe we could maybe piggyback on that in the sense that, you know, maybe we could have two type of meetings that would be like a field trip or something, that we could go out and see stormwater facilities, see what's being done at Terra Vesa, and, you know, just educate ourselves on what those things are being done out there, other than just sitting and talking about it, actually go out and see them and visit them. I know it would have to be in the summertime where we would do that, when we have more light to go out and the weather's more conducive for that. But just to have a meeting like that, I think would be good. Because there's a
You know,
lot of
we
things
did
about
talk before the East Fire Station or the West Fire Station was finished. We did talk about having a tour of their renewable items and in general the whole construction, and that never happened for a couple of reasons, but mostly staff turnover. So I think a field trip would be great. We also used to, like in January and February, do some sustainability planning as much as we could and what we were going to focus on for that year. So I also think, you know, a little bit more time that we could work with Phil on what we can do in the city, what our next steps should be, some strategy along those lines. I think that would be great also.
Yeah, I like that.
And I like the idea of being able to have a little bit more time on some of these discussion items, because I do feel like, because we always have so much on the agenda that we get rushed and there's so much more to talk about. So maybe in terms of looking at streamlining the agenda, trying to figure out, are there some things we could take off that we don't need to have on every single agenda, where we then could devote more time to specific topics.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, what I'm hearing is that unanimous support for moving from 8 to 10 meetings. It seems like folks are generally okay with the idea of the 2 additional meetings one being staffed by myself and the other being staffed by Phil, just to reduce the number of new meetings that staff have to attend. And then maybe we'll just have to logistically work with Nate to see if that's possible in terms of making those 2 additional meetings have only sustainability or only stormwater topics. But it sounds like I think that would work.
Yeah, I'm certainly comfortable, like if Claudia and Phil and or Nate want to have a conversation, you know, as kind of the leaders and the agenda makers about what you all think might work. And we can like bring it up next time, talk about like a final decision. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't necessarily, you know, like it's just like, you know, we won't cover the stormwater or the sustainability topics for a month, you know, but maybe we can kind of, you know, get those back to back, and it's not like we couldn't cover other topics in the meeting, so that you wouldn't have to feel like you have to fill the time of the entire meeting with sustainability issues or stormwater issues. But we have, you know, maybe an hour and a half or hour, you know, something like that would be, you know, where we could have you would just lead the discussion and, you know, kind of give some feedback on some items that you want to maybe get some more feedback on, and we can, you know, kind of figure out some next steps as a commission as to how we tackle those better.
And if we did have focus meetings on one or the other of the topics, I would certainly for my own part, advertise them as like an opportunity to come speak to the county. Because I you know me, I like giving people opportunity to come in.
That's a good idea.
And so it can be like, you want to talk about stormwater? This is your meeting. Or like everyone is come to this meeting and give your 3 minutes, and that way we can kind of push people into a time where they're probably going to be able to watch a deeper discussion about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get it. Okay. So it seems like we want to make a decision to, I guess, not permanently, but I know we had the thought to make it kind of an option to have the meetings as an optional add-on, but it seems like we kind of want to permanently change it to 10, which I think is fine. I guess I don't have a problem with that.
Nate, actually everybody, the months in the past when we had 10 meetings a year, I think it was 10. Chris, I think
We used to have monthly meetings, so we went from monthly to 8 meetings.
Well,
And-
we usually didn't have a meeting in April because we
That's
have
right.
so many other things going on.
Mhm.
And we seldom had a meeting in December. So
Mhm.
if you're looking at the calendar, those might be the 2 months to just have no meetings.
Yeah, those two, and I think the only other consideration would be to have 1 month off during the summer. So, but you know, I think I agree with you right now. I would say the front runners would be April and December as the 2 months that we don't have meetings.
Okay. So that being June and October to life again.
And Nate, I would be willing to work with you on just kind of looking at, you know, kind of a reconfigured calendar for the year and just kind of think about some strategies of when we could talk about certain things, how we could, you know, try to organize it such that we streamline some of the topics a little bit more. You know, just some ideas like that that could be presented back to the commission and they don't get their comments on it. So I'd be happy to work with you on that, you know, offline.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously it seems, I mean, we're probably gonna have to put this to a vote and add on the additional meetings, and so the calendar of events is gonna change pretty dramatically, and, you know, with that, we'll, you know, we can come up with a summary of kind of a change of how things are, agendas, how they're gonna be formed. So yeah, I think that sounds good, Chris. Let's get together and have a chat about some of that.
If it's helpful, I can send you both the calendar when we used to have more meetings, and maybe that will help you split things up a little bit.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Alright. Someone want to make a motion to change the number of meetings from 8 to 10?
I don't think we need a motion.
No? Okay. We're just all in agreement?
We can vote on it, but I don't think we need anything formal.
Alright, everyone ready to vote? Or any other discussion? Alright, all in favor of changing the number of RCC number of meetings from 8 to 10, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And I think the ayes have it, and looks like we're gonna
Sorry.
looks like we're gonna be having some more time together. So I think that's great. I think, you know, again, thank you, Gabriella, for pushing that through, and to those watching, if you're on the council, thanks for giving us some more opportunities to get some stuff done. It's great. And we'll take a look for the next meeting when we bring a new calendar of events that details what we're gonna be talking about for those 2 meetings, and I'll pretty much spelled it out here with this good discussion, but look forward to kind of implementing those thoughts this year. All right, let's I guess we're ahead by 10 minutes now, which is great.
Let's keep it going.
Good job, Kim.
Well, Claudia helped a lot with her cancellations.
You know,
Did we identify which months we're not having a meeting in?
I guess I'll plan on keeping April and December as no meeting months.
Okay.
If that sounds good.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was to be honest, it was nice to have December off to melt into vacation time. And honestly, I feel like we didn't lose ground over the, you know, month, 2 months here. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but
No.
all right, let's move on to item 5C, talking about the sustainability plan. I put this originally on the calendar of events as almost as a kickoff, just to talk about, Phil wants to talk about a plan for the sustainability plan. And I guess I just wanted to share, I know a resident reached out I forgot what she saw or why she reached out, but she was interested in potentially helping out with the sustainability plan, and I pointed her to Phil and said, yeah, this is just starting out and don't really have a super concrete plan, but so there's definitely interest within the community, and I don't know if Phil's made some leeway with that we can keep spreading good news, or Phil, you want to just take it away?
No, not much in the last year, to be honest. Kind of had some grand but vague ideas about what I was going to do with pushing forward in a sustainability plan, and kind of when everything went haywire in the spring, that derailed a lot of things. And one of the casualties of the craziness last year was really making any concrete progress on this. Just as by way of explanation for a couple members who I think weren't on with the RCC last year when we covered this in either February or March. I can do a quick screen share here just to kind of show the slides that were in the packet. This is something that I put together last year to present to the RCC, and it was just a little bit of preliminary literature research on existing plans out there, whether they're called sustainability plans or climate plans or energy and water plans. There were resiliency plans, things like that, with a number of neighboring communities and then just some others in totally different parts of the country, just to get a sense of what sorts of plans are out there right now, what topics do they cover, how were they initiated. That's sort of what's touched on in the second page here, is how long they took and who all was involved in crafting them. But this was just kind of to sort of spark some thinking on what a sustainability plan might look like for Fitchburg. And the one thing that I did notice is a number of these topics that are covered are things that Fitchburg already has addressed in other ways. And so we have, we have things like housing is one of the topics here. Well, Fitchburg has a housing plan, and land use and planning, we have a comprehensive plan for the city. And so a few of these are already covered. And, there are a lot of questions we'd have to address right away. Why are we actually going through with this if we want to create a sustainability plan? Do we want it to overlap with some of these existing plans, or do we want to keep it separate and maybe a little bit more limited in the topics that it covers? Who all would be involved in this? How broad an effort would it be? But just that was something I thought was worth considering last year, is that there are some topics that tend to be pretty standard to include in plans like this. But then some of them also do overlap with some of what we already have. And essentially, the one thing that is maybe higher on the wish list would just be because of the 2019 Clean Energy Resolution that the council passed. That did call for the city to create, I believe, an energy and water plan. So we don't actually have anything for the city of Fitchburg that says we need a sustainability plan. There are some residents that have asked about it. The RCC has asked about it. And we have a number of neighbors in this county and in the state that have resiliency or sustainability plans. And just in terms of kind of keeping up with the Joneses, there is a little bit of a feeling of, what is Fitchburg waiting for? And so, certainly that is part of the motivator, I think, just that because there are so many cities that have these plans by now, it can feel like we're behind the curve. So these are all topics that certainly we'd want to address if we decide we want to push forward with a plan and have kind of some additional initial meetings to discuss sort of what the overarching purpose of this is and what we want it to actually accomplish. But the one actual anything close to a mandate that exists is that Clean Energy Resolution that said that Fitchburg will create a climate or an energy and water plan. Beyond that, anything else that we would want to include in there depends on what we think should be included, what we have the capacity for, if we're seeking any kind of outside consulting assistance, what we could get the funding for, things like that. I did just in the past couple months pick up a book for myself that is written on, it's a step-by-step guide to sustainability planning. So I got the manual now. There's a there's a lot of good information in there that I think would really help me to kind of plan out and process what this might look like for somebody who, I haven't gone through something this comprehensive before. So leading something like this, having that sort of assistance and maybe bringing in some outside help would be useful. But yeah, that's just sort of a quick background for. Sorry?
The dogs in.
Oh, a little bit of a refresher for folks from last year, and then also kind of a primer for people who weren't on that in that meeting last year.
Could I give a little bit of history? Because
Sure.
I think, with the exception of Chris, I don't think any of you were with RCC when we tried to do this the last time. We have tried to. RCC wanted to get a sustainability plan to give us direction and bring everything that we work on together. So we have a systematic approach, because it seems like we just do piecemeal stuff, like we need street lights on fish hatchery should be LED, or replace the lights in the city hall, or add more insulation here, or work on business stuff. Everything just seems sort of a piecemeal. So we thought, well, if we have a sustainability plan, it will give us direction going forward and bring all of these pieces together. And we tried, I think, Chris, you can help me out on this, I think two councils in a row to get budget funding to work with an outside consultant, Sherry Gruder, to put together a sustainability plan, and the council turned down the funding. So I think that it would be great to get a plan. I don't know if you have the time, Phil, to do this without outside consulting, and if we need outside consulting, then I guess we need to look at getting something in the budget request for next year.
I would say yes and no. This is something I could do without outside funding, but it's going to be much more limited. The more we're able to bring in somebody who has gone through this before and who understands a lot of the complexities and kind of how to structure things from the outset, I think that enables us to have a more kind of tightly knit plan and probably something that's more robust. You might be talking about the difference between more of a high level 40-page sort of something more along the lines of a mission statement, as opposed to 100-page more in-depth and really quantitative metrics-based plan. It's certainly not going to be anything to rival the climate action plan that Dane County just put out. They have that's just a different scale. But certainly I would say the level of plan that we're able to put together will depend on whether I'm doing this myself, certainly with RCC and other staff input, because goodness, I can't do it myself. But whether we're doing this more internally or if we are bringing in any kind of outside assistance like that, yeah.
From my perspective, sustainability and also climate change resiliency is something that I personally am very passionate about, and it's something. This is a great discussion because I think it's important to get this background. But I am very interested in. I've already been thinking about potentially looking at bringing in something like a consultant for a potential budget amendment, and so maybe I need to have a longer conversation. I'm happy to have this information. I'm interested to hear more discussion about what the value of it would be, because I am certainly interested in this is not a CIP project. This would be a budget amendment. I actually considered doing it this past year, but the budget was going to be so tight because of the pandemic that it was not going to fit in this year's budget. So, but I think we should certainly look at it in 2022. It sounds like the committee wants it, and it's something that I'm interested in sponsoring.
Mm-hmm. And I think what would really be helpful would be even just to have a kickoff meeting at some point with a number of stakeholders, and probably not just city staff. I think that would be too myopic, but city staff, some various council representatives, maybe some community members, just to talk about and maybe we would do this in stages, start with staff and expand it, but kind of trying to capture what do we want to do with a sustainability plan, kind of create that mission of this. Why are we putting this together? What do we want it to accomplish? What areas do we think it should capture? I think that there's sort of a paradox of it's hard to know the full scope of what we want to do until we've had these meetings, but at the same time you get the funding and you get the experts in there because they help you figure out what that scope is going to be. And so that's kind of been where I've been sort of stopping and starting with this, is trying to figure out which step do you start with, because a number of them really do inform each other, and you can get into a lot of sort of just iterative meetings without getting anywhere if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
This does sound like it's potentially a good time to talk about it, since we have a lot of lead time before we would look at what a consultant would be. But I have a list of, I agree. I think a kickoff meeting with stakeholders would be great. And I love the idea of including people from the public. I even have, obviously there's that person you mentioned earlier, Nate, but I have a list of people that have specifically said they're interested in climate change. I know there's local members of Sierra Club that are in the area that I know of. And I think there's would be some interest from some pretty great residents that would be interested in talking about from their perspective what they'd like to see. So I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah.
If that's something that we want to plan for sometime later in the year.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think, just a little bit more background. I think, the time when we were trying to get, funding for the sustainability plan wasn't a favorable time with that council. And so we were kind of working uphill a little bit at that time. I think, more and more, with all the projects that are happening across Dane County, I think that, people can kind of start to see the value of, investing in the sustainability, and that, putting a plan together could really pay off, very quickly for Fitchburg as a community and for the residents of Fitchburg. Part of the planning that we did with Sherry Gruder was to sit down and we talked about things and what's the strategy for, how do we put together the sustainability plan, and she was going to facilitate sessions with members of the public. So what both of you guys are saying, getting public input is, a smart idea with this. And her goal was to try to get that as diverse as it possibly could be. So you want the churches represented, you want, everything that you can possibly think of within the community, trying to get them represented. And I was thinking to myself, how in the heck are we going to get all these people in one room? It's a little bit easier right now virtually, but that was one of the goals, was for her to really get, a diverse set of input on it, because it does vary depending on, different parts of the community that you live in.
I think, Chris, actually, wasn't that her first step to get all of the stakeholders?
Yep, and get all the feedback and bring in all the information and then develop the plan.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm really sorry to do this. I have a little family emergency. I need to jump off. So I'm wondering if somebody could just take over the timing of the meeting for the last part.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Good
So,
luck.
thank you. All right, thanks, guys.
So back to your conundrum, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I think the first step is to get the stakeholders involved, and and maybe excuse me, maybe if Gabriella can get funding available to at least have a consultant point us in the direction, or give us some tips to go forward, and we can take it from there. I don't know if that's a possibility, but as Chris pointed out, it would be difficult to get people together right now. Zoom is a nice substitute, but it's not the same as being in the same room with people. So maybe we can target that for later in the year. Give us time to think about the consultant and get funding available.
I can definitely look into it. Later in the year would be easier because, you know, we can always do a budget amendment mid-year.
Yeah.
And the budget will be more clear in terms of if the impact has changed due to the vaccine starting to roll out. So it's possible that there could be money in the budget that wasn't available last year when we were putting it together. So yeah, it's something we could certainly consider. Maybe I could work with Phil. I don't know what the cost of something like that might be, or you know how to put together an estimate. Maybe we could work on that separately.
Yeah, I think there are enough people I could reach out to either because they would be somebody we'd ask to consult with us, or they've worked on these projects for their own organizations, that I think we could get a pretty good ballpark estimate.
Phil, did the 20, whatever the resolution is named, was there a deadline associated with getting that plan, the energy and water plan together, or is this?
There was not. It was kind of one of the tricky things that happened with that resolution, and I you know, of course I wasn't involved in putting it together at all, so this is just as an observer. There are several things in there beyond the specific you know, percent renewable energy by such and such a year. There were a number of other things in there that said, you know, as a city, we also want to pursue these things, but there was no kind of a deadline set for them. There was no more specific kind of measurement to track the outcome of those. This is one of those that they. I can double check it too to make sure I'm not leading you astray. But no, I don't believe there was any kind of a date set in there. It was just kind of a call to action for the future.
Which is good. It's just we could have had a little leverage, I guess, if there was a, you know, by 25 or whatever. But
the specific language in the resolution. The city will develop an energy and water plan that includes a resiliency / sustainability and adaptation plan to deal with anticipated changes associated with climate change. But yeah, no date for achieving that.
that's fine. I was just curious.
When are grants typically due? I mean, I feel like we should set a goal for like just a target, just to have something out there of when we'd love to have a sustainability plan in place, and then try to build it back. We can make that happen.
The grants that I've seen seem to cycle the most around the end of the year or the start of the year, and so there is that Office of Energy Innovation grant that has an application due in 10 days. I guess this is going to be maybe part of my staff update, but I've spoken with a number of staff and just am not really making much progress on finding projects that people feel are feasible to pursue in the short term. This is certainly something that we could look to write in as for a grant, is putting together an energy and water plan, a sustainability resilience plan. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the grant to see when the grant funding would have to be spent by. So if we don't already have a plan for the plan, I'd have to make sure that we could first of all have enough put together to be competitive for that grant, but then also give them a good sense that we're ready to use the money in the short term.
The timeline too might actually work out well, because if budget is voted on in early November of this year, if you could potentially, I mean, depending on what the council looks like and what the interest is, maybe we do it where it's half funded by grant money and half funded by the city, and and that might be part of the passage of it. And so the timing actually might work out well. I know we're talking about pretty far in the future, but if we could get maybe some information at the listening session this year, I'll plan to submit some sort of budget amendment, possibly mid-year for that, but then a major budget amendment to fund a consultant for the plan, followed up by a grant application after November, after theoretical budget amendment would pass.
These grant opportunities that are passing us by because we don't have either enough time or ideas to apply. That's a perfect example of why we need a sustainability plan, so that we can look to the plan and say, okay, this is on our plan, this is what we could apply for, and it would just help us. I think that would be another justification for putting the plan together. There are dollars out there that we can take advantage of that we're not.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is, I'm absolutely in favor of a plan. I would say that I wouldn't look at that necessarily as a panacea in terms of getting grant funding, because what determines the grant funding is staff availability, kind of being on top of grant cycles and having the time to apply for those and the time to work on project ideas. Certainly this is one that I'm wishing I had been more on top of kind of the grant that came up in January, that I had seen it coming through in November, and had the time then to start working on potential projects. I think there are things that could have been doable, but they were going to take quite a bit of lead time of work to figure them out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a plan could definitely help us prioritize. And I agree that would be really useful. And for that purpose, if nothing else, it would be really nice to finally have a plan put together. I think you're right that Fitchburg has done things a little bit piecemeal, a little bit disjointed, and it's easier to be able to craft a narrative for why we need to pursue projects and for why this grant is a meaningful one for the city if we have that plan. I think those are really good, strong arguments in favor of putting something together.
So what do you think, Phil, would be a realistic target for wanting to get a plan in place? Is it, third quarter of 2022, or do we think we could get something put together this year? I mean, what do you think?
Can I just interrupt as timekeeper?
Sure.
We're about 5 minutes off, and maybe we should give Phil some time to think about this and continue this at the next meeting.
I would say going through the entire process within one calendar year would be a very aggressive goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want to try to commit anyone to that. I think third or fourth quarter of 2022 would be pretty reasonable if we start really putting our heads together by this spring. I think that would be doable. I think somewhere between a year and a half and 3 years is kind of a pretty standard timeline, depending on how robust you want it to be and how many people are involved.
Okay. I think that gives us something to at least have in our heads.
Okay.
And then we can talk more about it at future meetings. But I think that you're just having that in my head now just kind of helps me think about, like, all right,
Sure.
Now let's get it there by third or fourth quarter of 2022.
Yeah, it'll be in minutes, right? So now we have documentation showing
That's right.
something.
Let the record show.
I had, kind of a last call for it to be during, or, to have something by 2025, which I think is the first benchmark of the resolution. But I think we can get something before then.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this conversation was good. I think we have a good plan to really circle back to this in the fall to potentially get some good grants and council liking to it. So
and I know we're behind time, and not to drag this out any further, but 2025 is a great year. That we love, like, the sort of round numbers, multiples of 5 as places to start things. If we do a sustainability plan in 2 years, no one's saying that has to be our only one. It's very common for these to be crafted maybe a little bit more bare bones, and as you go through that, as you track things, you kind of learn what you're doing, and you can create new iterations of it. So I think one thing that can scare a lot of groups away from creating a sustainability plan is thinking you need 200 pages right away, and it has to be the most robust, comprehensive thing. I think if we just set our first goal as having a plan, maybe it starts out a little bit lighter, but we have we have kind of goals in place to revisit and restructure over the years is certainly something that could be a way we approach it.
I like that idea, Phil, and I would encourage the approach when we ask for funding to have a shorter timeline. You know, I hate to think about nothing until 2025. So let's say by the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023, we have this plan, and it may not be the detailed plan, but it will be an overview of, and we can always drill down later.
And we think about our language, maybe initially we call it a guidebook or something along those lines, and kind of think about how we want to, it's a little bit of a marketing pitch on how we want to sell this initial effort. Yeah.
Cool.
Very good.
All right, let's move on. Again, I think we can definitely talk about this in the next couple months or this year, but good discussion. Let's move on to 5D, the moment everyone's been waiting for, the unlimited recycling data that Claudia has put together. And I think, I thought the process was slick. I actually used it for the first time, and I was very impressed by how the Pelletieri truck guy could pick up the bag with the arm. I thought that was very interesting. So sorry, just a nice story to share, but I'm sure Claudia has some more important things to talk about.
No, thank you. So if you'll remember, earlier last year, we had a request into Pelletieri to see if we could get some information on how many unlimited bags are being picked up. And kind of the first response was, that's not data that's really easily able to collect, because we would need to collect that manually, and would have to get all of our drivers to have a separate process for those weeks to collect that information. And it's certainly not part of our contract for them to provide that information for us. So I did want to say thank you to Pelletieri for collecting this information for us, because I did go back to them and kind of reiterate why it's important, because we are at a decision point, kind of reevaluating if that's something that we want for the city to continue with the unlimited recycling, or if it's something we really want to phase out if it's not very well used around the city. So if we keep it, we should advertise it more, and if we decide not to, then that's something we would phase out. So understanding that it was a decision point for us, they were more willing to help us out and collect some information, because it's hard to make decisions with no information. So I just wanted to say thank you to Pelletieri, and then also to keep in mind that this is not regular information that we'll be seeing in the future. But I will go ahead and share my screen on what they found. So there were 2 weeks that they collected information on how many bags they picked up and from how many homes. So the end of November and then the beginning of December. The first week they picked up from between 19 to 70 homes on a given day. And then the first week of December, it ranged from 14 to 35 homes on a given day. And then just to put that into perspective on how many homes are using it in a week, week 1 was 3.7 homes, and then week 2 was 2.4 homes, for an average of 3% of the homes using unlimited recycling for any given week, based on these 2 weeks that we collected data.
Can I ask a question about this data?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the first line, November 23rd. 35 homes are using unlimited recycling and 60 bags were collected. Does that include the bag that's already in, does that include the cart, the recycling?
No. So this would be the bags that are placed in the clear plastic bags for recyclables that do not fit in the cart.
So in every case here, people are putting out not only one extra bag of recycling, but multiple bags of extra recycling. Really? I have never seen that when I walked around. Okay.
And it could be that there's a home that's putting out 5 extra bags and most homes are only putting out 1 extra bag, I'm not sure, we don't have the data down to that specificity, but it's a good point.
But you know that this does not include their regular cart.
Right, it does not. This is in addition to the cart, the bags placed next to the cart, right?
Thanks.
So to me, this was actually a much higher number than I was expecting. I think 3% of homes in any given week, and then you kind of assume, although maybe it's not true, that different people are taking advantage of it different weeks. So potentially 3% of homes did it one week, and then another 3% use it a different week. So it could be 6% of homes taking advantage of unlimited recycling. So that's the data that we have. Does anyone have any thoughts or feedback on that?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for approaching Pelletieri and asking for this information. I would think that it would be helpful for them also because they have to price the contract and they don't know how many bags they're picking up. So I think, but I appreciate you asking that. It's a little bit distressing and concerning to me that people are putting out not just 1 extra bag of recyclables, but multiple bags of recyclables. I mean, are they putting out somebody else's recycling, or do we need to hit harder about the reduce, or maybe they're not crushing their cans or collapsing their cardboard, or, I mean, this is, like I said, this is a little distressing to me to see that they're, for example, on the week of the 23rd, 35 homes and 60 bags. That's, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I've seen it before where
I think it's
some person.
The families. I mean, just when we have family or had family visiting, not during COVID, but we didn't put them out in plastic. We would just pile that up into our garage and slowly add it to our recycling. So that's only when we have family visiting. Granted, there's only 2 of us now, but homes that have kids, my neighbors get deliveries of cardboard boxes full of stuff, once or twice a day. So it's not unusual, I don't think, to have more than 1 bag.
And I guess that is a good point that this last week of November was a holiday week. So potentially people did have out of town guests in their home. So maybe that week is a little bit high, and maybe the following week with the 2.4% is more normal. Not sure about that.
Or maybe a lot of it is the cardboard that we've been talking about, that people are getting more boxes.
I think that's probably true.
One thing I noticed on the Wildwood South side of Facebook site is that people were, I think there'd be more people doing this, but a lot of people were complaining that they couldn't find the clear plastic bags. So they're asking people, where can we get clear plastic bags from? And it's, from what I see, it's not that easy to find them. You got to specifically know which stores have them or order them online. So
Pick and Save.
Pick and Save, yeah, I think that was one of the ones that came up.
Yeah, Pick and Save and Home Depot, I think were the ones
Home
that
Depot, I sometimes I just don't see them there. I see the other contractor bags, but
they have leaf bags. If you go to the leaf bag section, they often have clear bags there.
Okay.
Well, from a plastic standpoint, I would really like to encourage people, if they have overflow, to do what Shelley did, or drop it off at the drop-off site.
Yeah.
And save the plastic bag.
It's a good point.
Also, if they have a tendency to always put more bags out there, they should go to a larger bin. But that's more money, right?
So for recycling, it's not. If you get a larger bin, there's a swap fee. So it's $25 to exchange the cart. That's a one-time fee. But then the larger bin is no extra cost per year. If you wanted a second bin, then there would be a cost for that. But getting a 95-gallon bin would be the same annual cost as a smaller bin.
I think we need to promote that a little bit more. If there's this, this much extra recycling, and if you all are seeing a lot of people with extra recycling, I know that some of my neighbors, their recycling often is to the brim. Maybe we need to advertise more that if they're I know we've done that in the past, Claudia. It seems to me that you've done that within the last couple of months, but I think we should hit it a little bit harder.
Yeah, at least once a year, I try to get that in the Fitchburg Star and on our Facebook page.
Yes, I wanted to make the point that the data request that we wanted to get was when we were considering rates for recycling and refuse, and so we were wondering how to justify, why should everyone pay for this unlimited recycling? And so if you consider that, only 6% of the people who pay this rate are using it, that seems very low. I mean, why should all these other people have to pay if they're not using it, kind of thing, right?
I agree. I looked at the numbers and thought, that doesn't seem very high, but then I looked at the number of bags and I thought, well, what would happen to that stuff if they didn't use if they didn't put them in a clear bag? That's what I worry about too. So that's just my thinking.
Nate, I struggle with that argument because I brought that up to the council early on when I was in RCC about brush pickups. And one of the council members pointed out to me that we all pay for bus service and very few of us use it. So, I just struggle with that. It's that argument, but I would like to see this number of extra recycling bags reduced. And I think we could do that by the cart exchange and see how that works. And how much is the swap fee, Claudia?
$25.
I actually think this sounds like it's being used pretty well. I mean, I was kind of surprised by how high the numbers were as well. I wonder, something like a service like this occurs to me, like you were saying, like it's really useful around a certain event where you have a lot of people coming here to your home and you have a lot of extra refuse, or maybe you just moved and you have a lot of new things that you have to unpack, and like maybe a person would only use it once every couple of years, but it does seem like it's a nice service to provide to residents. But I can't recall, do we have a sense of what the difference in the contract would be?
We do have that information because it was part of the RFP. With and without unlimited recycling, what were rates that we asked for. I don't remember offhand what the difference was.
Wasn't it?
We don't have to decide anytime in the near future, right? Because we have a contract for a few years, right?
We have a contract for 5 years. What we put into the contract was that after the first year, we might decide to get rid of the unlimited recycling. So that's kind of a decision point sometime this year to make.
Okay.
Wasn't it on the order of like $10 kind of thing? It's like $7 to $10.
I thought it was higher than that, but maybe not.
I can take that as a follow-up to look that up. I don't remember offhand.
Yeah. Well, I think this is great data. We only have 10 minutes here to cover, I think, a good amount of stuff, but unless anyone has any other burning thoughts, I think this is great. I think we can definitely revisit this when we need to make a decision later in the year. So thank you, Claudia, for coordinating. And let's keep moving to council update.
Yep, this is gonna be pretty quick. So 3 things that we saw in this commission in October and November passed council since we last met. The stormwater utility management plan passed. Oh, sorry, the stormwater utility maintenance plan passed. The solid waste collection rates that we voted on also passed council. And the Purple Cow brush and yard waste contract also passed. And then in terms of I guess the only update is the budget. So we already talked about the meeting number. But 3 other ones that you might be interested in. The hybrid and electric vehicle fund reinstatement passed with the caveat that it would be funded through any gasoline savings that happen this year. So we will look at adding that money next year, once we know what the savings look like this year. Although I am working with the finance director to probably in February or March, once we have final budget numbers from 2020, we're looking to move up to $20,000 of gasoline savings into the hybrid and electric vehicle fund this year, savings from the previous year. So that's going to be a separate resolution that I'll bring forward whenever those numbers are finalized, so probably February or March. So I'll let you know if that, how much money that might be and what that looks like from a council perspective. The other two amendments was number one, we increased the budget for stormwater vegetation management by $40,000. And that, I think Claudia is actually going to be working on a stormwater vegetation management plan sometime later this winter. So it kind of goes in concert. And then the Swan Creek monitoring station, which we talked a lot about, that passed. So that is going to happen.
Oh, good.
And I don't know, I actually would throw it over to Ron or Claudia if there is an update from the stakeholders, because I wasn't able to participate in any meetings. I don't know if a meeting had happened since that vote was taken.
Sure. So just a quick update. We had a meeting just to kind of game plan on what it's going to look like this year. The next steps for the city were to put together formal agreements between us and the town of Dunn, and then between us and USGS for how payment of this station are going to work. The Lake Wapisa Conservation Association has already provided their $2,000 contribution, so we have that in hand. And Ron and I forget the other gentleman's name, they have volunteered to be the folks who will help with collecting the samples this year and bringing that over to USGS. And Ron, I'm not sure if you had anything else to add.
Well, just to add, actually last week I had a conversation with James Sy from the Clean Lakes Alliance, and we talked about the Swan Creek monitoring station. He was happy that we got it, and he said, in the future, if there's something we can do to help, like with the campaign fundraising event for 2022, they would be interested in helping out. So I think that's something that we need to further explore.
Good. Awesome.
Nice work championing that, Ron. You really kind of spearheaded that effort and made a lot of things happen to make that a reality. So thank you for all of your effort and all your plans to make sure it gets implemented the right way as well.
Yeah. I'll keep everyone updated on it, and well, I'm sure Claudia will too, but I'll take pictures and things, and hopefully once it gets installed, we all could take a visit and see.
Yeah, please invite us for a visit. I'd love to go. So let us know.
Yeah, too.
Gabrielle, just to follow up on the hybrid cars, is there something, I know I'm taking up time, but is there something that in the future that the city has that all cars will be either hybrid or electric in future purchases?
We don't have anything specific like that. It's
Is that
really,
something we can push for?
I'm sorry.
That's something we can push for?
It's something we could discuss. It's worth discussing. It's really kind of at the discretion of the department heads that are actually making the purchases. It can be, we can add that to the CIP project, but the vehicle fund was kind of a first step, because usually the problem would be that it's more funding than what's allocated, just because hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles tend to be a little bit more expensive. And so without that extra money, it's hard for a department head to make the choice.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully when we have the fund in place, then perhaps we could look at building in targets or request, like looking at potentially requirements. I don't know what that would look like, but yeah. Nothing like that exists yet, but we could potentially look at it in the future.
It'd be nice if we have a goal by 2030 that all the cars that the city purchases will either be hybrid or electric, or preferably.
It'd be a great part of the sustainability plan.
Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Awesome. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Gabrielle, and also Ron for all your work on the Swan Creek monitoring.
Yep, thank you.
All right, thanks, Gabriella. Let's move on to one of the final things, the staff update. I think there's a couple things to go through here.
All right, so At our last meeting, one of the things that we were talking about is how to get information out about the recycling guide and all of the resources that we have available. So one of the things that I did was I talked to our finance department on what it would take to get something into our utility bills about the recycling guide. Basically, it sounded like it was not a problem to add a line. So this is what I requested that they add to future utility bills. Just not sure what to do with unwanted items. Check out the city's recycling guide with a link to it. So you should see that on future utility bills. If you don't, let me know, because sometimes, especially if it's the first one, it just doesn't make it into the template. And then also, I wanted to note that if there's a space issue, it might be removed for a specific utility bill, but the intention is to have that message in there from now on. Another thing that I discussed with the Director of Public Works is kind of the ongoing issues that we've been seeing at the recycling drop-off site and our concerns that the recycling drop-off site is being used by non-Fitchburg residents. We've worked on putting as many signs as you can. There's a sign overload there in terms of letting people know that it's for Fitchburg residents and that you're really not allowed to use it if you're not a Fitchburg resident. And it doesn't seem to be working. I don't think the signage has been working. So one thing that I wanted to do was collect information on how many people who are non-Fitchburg residents are using our recycling facility. And I think that's important for us if changes are going to be made to know that one way or another. And so he authorized us to use overtime hours, usually at the end of the year, depending on the year. There might be overtime hours available that haven't been used yet. So he authorized using some 2020 hours to do some additional monitoring on the recycling drop-off site. I do want to say that it's probably not sustainable for us to do this type of monitoring all the time. It was because we had overtime hours available. But I think we collected some really good information. And so that's what's available on the next page here. The 19th and the 2nd, so accidentally went into the new year. The request was to do this all last year, but a couple days in this year also occurred. But regardless, December 19, the 2nd and the 3rd, we had someone stationed out there for 2 hours to stop everyone. And then the other dates were someone just passing by and seeing someone there and stopping them. So it wasn't quite as much of a concerted effort to stop people. It was just kind of, if someone was in the area, they would try to stop folks and get their ID. So we did put up a sign that says, "Be prepared to show Fitchburg residency." And here's what we found. Overall, we counted, if you didn't have an ID, we counted you, or said you didn't have an ID, we counted you as a non-resident. Just because I don't think that many people drive without a driver's license.
They all have an ID. They're just, you're right, they're out of towners.
So we just counted anyone who said that they didn't have their ID on them. Like on this day, there were 4 people who said they didn't have an ID, and 2 people the day before said they didn't have an ID. We counted them as people who didn't have proof of residency and put probably an out-of-towner. And it was 18% for the random data that we collected, and I think that's a pretty high number.
Yeah.
Almost a fifth of people using our recycling drop-off site, at least based on this limited data, are not Fitchburg residents. So that was pretty alarming.
I agree.
Claudia, do you know what they were dropping off?
I don't. That's not something that I asked to be collected. Basically, what we had was just a sheet where they could like tally and take a couple of pieces of information, and the information that we collected were date and time and whether or not they had proof of residency.
Were they turned away if they weren't Fitchburg residents?
Yes. And then another thing that we did was we worked on a little handout for folks to hand out if they stopped vehicles. And this is the notice for what we were handing out, which is this site is intended for residential use by Fitchburg residents only. Other users, including but not limited to contractors, businesses, or residents from other communities, that's a typo, are not permitted to use the site. Please be prepared to show proof of Fitchburg residency, such as a driver's license or utility bill showing a Fitchburg address when using the site. The cost to operate this facility is paid for by Fitchburg residents, and your cooperation helps us continue to provide these services to our residents at a fair price. And then a website for more information. So we're trying to get the word out. I think it does kind of show us that this might have been, having an unstaffed site might have worked in the past, but our site at this point is becoming very popular, and it's also popular for non-residents as well. So I think we have to continue to think about what we're going to do here.
Claudia, one of the first projects, or one of the first things that came to RCC shortly after I became a commissioner, the mayor attended one of our meetings and was complaining about the drop-offs, the drop-off centers. So I think that we've had a problem for many, many, many years of people using the drop-off site who aren't Fitchburg residents. It's just, I think it's just gotten worse because, you know, we've got polystyrene and many of the surrounding communities don't, and we have tons of capacity for cardboard. So I think this is a problem that maybe we need to discuss at another meeting, because I don't think this is going to go away. It's just going to get worse.
Right, and I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm not sure if that looks like requesting a staff person or a part-time staff person in the future, in a future budget, to be out here at least part-time to stop people and do what we did for a limited amount of time in December. But it's definitely something to consider.
Claudia, do you know about any other cities, not just around here, but around the country, if they have the same issue and what their ideas are about what they do about it?
I think it's pretty unique to have an unstaffed recycling facility. I can't think of any that I know of offhand.
I was just thinking the same thing. I could actually, if you want, I can volunteer to do kind of a Google survey search of different cities around the country and see what they're doing, how they handle people who are using residential drop-off sites who are non-residents, and see if they have a program in place to stop that or prevent that. So I'll volunteer to do that.
Sure. And I think probably the most likely program in place is having a staff member there to check IDs, but there might be other ways you can do it.
Okay. I don't mind doing it so I can present at the next meeting.
Sure, that would be great.
Well, Ron, to shorten your search a little bit, Ron, Middleton has a staff site, Madison has a staff site, and Verona has a staff site.
Yeah, and I did experience it firsthand. I went out there, I think, on December 19th. So I thought it was, you know, a really good awareness campaign. I was, you know, I didn't know it was happening. So I was happy to see that it was happening. And I thought the little insert, you know, really explained, you know, the why behind it really well. So nice job with that. And we should talk about it at a future meeting and just see if there's, you know, see what Ron figures out from research and see if we can do anything a little bit differently to help that out.
Yeah, I think when we do have to reopen this conversation, I think this is somewhat tied together with the unlimited recycling conversation as well. Given the fact that cardboard is probably what a lot of people are bringing, and you could theoretically put that on the unlimited recycling if you're a resident. But I think it would be interesting to know the difference in price from Pelletier for the unlimited, but then also like what the budget for this drop-off site has looked like over the years? Because clearly it's gone up, and we've obviously had to add the additional cardboard and
Mhm.
yeah, it just we have those numbers in front of us. But I thank you so much for getting this data because it makes this conversation a lot easier to have some actual information to look at. So thank you.
Claudia's done some really good charts on this, on how much we've used, how much it costs, I think. Haven't you, Claudia?
I have. I'll have to pull up that information and I can put it in a future packet for discussion. All right, so just moving on, because I know we're short on time here. The recycling drop-off site has 2 additional cardboard dumpsters, so those were dropped off. They're going to be serviced 5 times a week. And then I do have a change order going through just to change our contract to officially say that this is the long-term solution. So this is kind of like an ad hoc thing that's happening right now. And then the change order is still going through.
It may not be a long-term solution, but it may be a solution until we figure out how we can limit the drop-off site to Fitchburg residents.
Right, which I think, right. And so just moving on, we followed up on, this was a question from a previous RCC meeting on polystyrene, and there was talk that the city of Madison doesn't have to sort their material before bringing it to Reynolds, sorry. So City of Madison brings it to Reynolds and they don't have to sort their material. So is that something that the city of Fitchburg could look into as well? So following up with Tim, found out that we actually already do bring our material to Reynolds. In the past, we brought it to Unique. And now we are bringing it to Reynolds. We still are needing to sort that material before we bring it to Reynolds. And so I reached out to the city of Madison just to see what might be different there, why we have to, and it seems like they don't have to. And one of the things that they told me is, well, first, of course, they have a staffed facility, so they have a staff member there who might be able to stop people from putting inappropriate materials in that bin. And then another thing that they do, and I didn't quite understand, I think he called it a super sack. Yeah, super sack. It sounds like they take the material from one bin and then they put it into a different bin called a super sack in order to transport it. So he said that they don't do any intentional sorting in that process, but he would think that his staff members, if they see inappropriate materials in there, that they would sort it as they're moving it from one bin to the super sack for transportation, and then they drop it off at Reynolds. So I think those are probably the 2 things that are making their polystyrene waste stream cleaner and therefore acceptable to Reynolds without quote unquote sorting beforehand. The fact that it's staffed, and then in this process they might be sorting it even though it's not an intentional sort process that they're doing. So I reached out to Tim and said, hey, if this is something where we don't have to sort this in the future, if Reynolds is willing to accept it without us sorting the material, if we find that it's a clean enough recycling stream for them to handle, can we revisit the price that we're paying for polystyrene? And he said, absolutely. So that's still a consideration, but at this time, they are needing to sort it before bringing it to Reynolds.
Thank you so much for exploring that option.
And I'll let you know if anything else comes of it. And then moving on here, stormwater, as Gabriella said, the stormwater utility maintenance plan was approved, and you can find it on this website here. We had a Curry Court public information meeting on Wednesday of last week, and there, if you're interested in the video recording, it's at that website there. We have received all at one time draft reports on the Lake Barney Sub-Zero and Fitchburg Road projects. So right now the bottleneck is me, just because I have a lot of things going on right now. So I need to review those draft reports and get comments back to our consultants. And then in the upcoming weeks, another high priority item for me will be getting out RFPs for vegetation management projects. And then I forgot to put the USGS monitoring station in here, so it's good that we talked about that earlier. And then Phil, I'll hand it off to you to talk about the sustainability updates.
Well, before you do that, and I realize we're late, and I'm timekeeper and I can't take any responsibility for us being late. But Claudia, is the recycling guide update in the works now?
So the recycling guide update has been done. That's something that Hannah has gone through and updated. In terms of sending it out, we have a budget amendment which will come to RCC at the next meeting to make those CDRR funds available for public education and outreach. So actually sending the recycling guide out would need to happen after that budget amendment goes through.
All right, thanks.
And Phil, if you want to.
All right. So sustainability should be pretty quick. I mentioned in November the possibility of doing a couple of internships. One of them wasn't going to work out, but with the university's energy analysis and policy, I mixed up that parenthetical. It's a graduate certificate with the Nelson Institute of Environmental Studies at UW. So I am working right now with one of the faculty advisors on putting together an internship plan for a group of graduate students to help us kind of start framing the structure for what will hopefully be our internal annual energy reporting in the future. So this is what we've been contracting out to Innovative Business and Engineering over the past several years. I'd like to get it to a point where, certainly I have a background in energy analysis work. I'd like to get an internal energy report to a point where anybody could download the data from MG&E and Alliant and put the report together themselves, whether they have energy background or not. So that's the goal. If we get to a point where it seems like we're just not going to be able to get there, then we can continue working with IBE in the future. But I would like this to be an internal thing that we have a little bit more control over. So that'll be happening during the spring semester for UW and these students. The climate champion topic was already covered. So in the final one, preliminary numbers, I don't have quite all the numbers in here yet because when I finally got my profile set up with Alliant Energy, there was an issue with their website and I wasn't able to log in and get the data here. But typically Alliance, the energy we get from Alliant is, 1% of our total. So these numbers are still pretty close. We purchased about 4.5 million kWh from MG&E. I would expect around 40 to 50,000 kWh from Alliant, but I need to get those final numbers. It is a decrease from 2019, and a lot of that has to do with just lower capacity, lower occupancy because of the pandemic and people working from home. So you can see some of our highest occupancy buildings, the library, city hall, park shelters with fewer reservations. These were all down in terms of electricity usage. The water utility did increase by 11%. But pretty much everything else was down. So we did decrease from 19 to 20. Gas was similar. We had 4% lower natural gas purchases from MG&E last year. And then in terms of what we were generating from renewable energy, our rooftop solar arrays, the 2017 municipal project with those 4 different rooftop arrays generated about 6% more from 2019 to 2020. So this is always an interesting thing to see an increase from one year to the next, because what you expect is to see about, I want to say it's about 0.5% degradation year over year, 0.25% degradation. And so over year, on average, you're going to be getting less electricity from your solar panels as they just are not quite as productive. I suspect 2020 was a much sunnier year than 2019. And so we actually had increased usage from those, which was really nice to see. And then we add in the East Fire Station project that gave us 4 months of generation. All told, we topped 20% renewable in 2020, and that's all of our rooftop. That's the 2009 and 11 solar projects at Public Works and City Hall, and then also the Green Power Tomorrow purchases that we were making from MG&E and just what's a part of their grid mix. So we're well on our way to our 25 by 25 commitment and should blow past it this year once the O'Brien project comes online. If we're using if you add together that $4.5 million that we purchased from MG&E plus this 415,000 we generated, we're pretty close to 5 million kWh total, and we should get between 900,000 and 1 million kWh generated by what we're purchasing from O'Brien. So that's just under 20% more. So my hope is by the end of this year, we'll be right around 40%. Now, again, this all is a little wibbly wobbly as occupancy is going to change again and usage is fluctuating and things like that. But somewhere in that broadly 35 to 45% range is what I'm expecting this year. So that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
Great. It's really great.
It's nice to see all those panels getting installed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I think that wraps up at least new content through 7A. Anything else? I'll say these announcements and we can end this thing. As per our last meeting, we decided to meet on the second Monday, so the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Monday, February 8th. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. At 6:30, same platform, being Zoom, I'm assuming. And if anyone wants to join in from the public, there's some links that you can, and you can participate and so forth. But again, I look forward to meeting with everybody in this new 2021 year. And with that, I'll adjourn this meeting if there's no other concerns or comments.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
job, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.